Dear people watching and listening, Assalamu alaikum. Kindly like and share this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Please support my channel by contributing to my Patreon account so that I can continue making the audiobook series. The part 2 of the book continues with the detailed narration of the Muslim conquest of North Africa, which is also known as the Muslim conquest of the Maghrib. The conquest was led initially by amrbinalaas and then continued on with uqbabinnafe. The conquest of North Africa lasted from 647 AD to 709 AD. Start of Chapter 18. Back to Africa. Muawiyah ruled as caliph at Damascus. After the abdication of Imam Hassan in 661, there was none left to contend with Muawiyah or dispute his authority. Things settled down in the Muslim world. Muawiyah had no high position in Islam. In fact, as a Muslim, he rated rather low. But as a ruler and administrator, he was shrewd and able, and his rule was marked by political and administrative success. In Egypt, after the death of amrbinalaas in 43 Hijri, 664 AD, his son Abdullah was appointed as governor. This suited Muawiyah for the time being. Abdullah knew Egypt and understood its problems. He was an able and respected officer, and his loyalty to the Caliph had never been in doubt. He did well as governor and ruled Egypt for 4 years before being relieved. But during his tenure as governor, there were no operations and no events of historical significance took place in Egypt or nearby. The forwardmost garrison of Islam stood at Barqa, under the command of uqbabinnafe, about whom much will be said in subsequent chapters. In Carthage too, everything was quiet and everyone was contented with his lot. After the revolt of Gregory and the shake-up which always follows such a revolt, and after the bloody battle of Subetula, and the brief siege and peaceful surrender of Carthage, things had returned to normal. The people selected another man to be their king, a Roman citizen named Hubayhiba, obviously an Arabic rendering of some Roman name. Nothing much is known about this man, but he proved a good ruler and administrator for the entire domain of Africa, consisting of the provinces of Mauritania, Numidia, Carthage, and Tripolitania. On the whole, the people of Africa were happy with the new situation and recovering rapidly from the wounds of war. They lived virtually as an independent people. They even organized a new military force for defense, and ironically, the enemy they had to defend themselves against was their own ex-empire. Constans too, grandson of Heraclius, had lain low for a long time, licking his wounds after the naval battle of Savari and getting over the shock of his defeat. The Roman navy had been driven out of the eastern Mediterranean, but slowly and steadily the empire recovered its balance and re-established its naval and military strength, though not to the same degree as before. They were reluctant to fight the Muslims by land or sea, but they were quite prepared to take on their enemies, especially their own rebellious subjects. The loss of Africa was a wound which had not yet healed. The disloyalty of Gregory, who broke away from the empire and declared himself an independent king. The bloody defeat inflicted by the Muslims upon the Roman army at Subetula. The willingness with which the population of Carthage surrendered to Abdullah bin Saad, and the 300 kantara of gold paid to the Muslims by the Africans. The cumulative effect of all this rankled like a thorn in the imperial side. Instead of feeling sympathy for the losses suffered by his African subjects and coming forward to relieve their distress, the petty-minded Constans decided to make the Africans pay him the same as they had paid the Muslims, that is 300 kantara of gold. The man chosen by Constantinople to re-establish Roman rule in Africa was a general named William. He sailed with a fleet of vessels carrying 30,000 troops. In due course, the Romans landed at Carthage, where they disembarked their army and demanded from the Africans, in the name of the emperor, 300 kantara of gold, the same as had been paid to the Arabs. The Africans refused to pay. They said that they had spent all that they had to save themselves from the Arabs, and now just did not have any more. They left no doubt in the mind of the general about what they thought of the emperor. In view of what has happened to us, they said, it would be more appropriate if he would do something to help us. The general insisted on payment. The Carthaginians persisted in their refusal to pay. If the general wanted that gold, he would have to fight for it. And fight he did. A sort of battle took place between his forces and the army of King Hubayhiba, in which the more sophisticated army of Rome scored a victory, after which William occupied the area of Carthage and brought the province of Africa once again into the Eastern Roman Empire. The date of this event is not known, but judging by what followed, it probably took place in 43 Hijri, 663 AD. Hubayhiba thought of the former independent life led by his subjects as being much better than what they now suffered under Roman generals and administrative officers. They had been much happier even under the Muslims, when the latter ruled over their territory for a short period. Unable to bear the change and unwilling to accept a change as permanent, Hubayhiba left Carthage and travelled to Damascus to see Caliph Muawiyah. There he pleaded for help and asked that an army be sent to drive the Romans out of Africa. The Caliph decided to do just that. In 45 Hijri, an army was dispatched from Damascus for the purpose of fighting and defeating William in Africa, and destroying or driving his Roman soldiers out of the territory. This army was placed under the command of a general named Muawiyah bin Hudaj, who was known as a staunch supporter of the Umayyad cause. After amrbinalaas had defeated Muhammad bin Abi Bakr, Caliph Ali's governor of Egypt, prior to resuming the governorship of the province, according to some accounts, it was this Muawiyah bin Hudaj, and not amrbinalaas, who had had Muhammad's body sewn into the skin of a donkey and burnt to ashes. Many years later, when the army of Abdullah bin Saad had returned from Subatullah, and he led an expedition into Nubia to subdue the Nubians, Muawiyah took part in that expedition and lost an eye to the superb marksmanship of the Nubian horse archers. Now Muawiyah bin Hudaj moved from Damascus to try conclusions with the Roman William. There is mention in history of his having led 2 expeditions before this into Africa, in 34 and 40 or 41 Hijri, but nothing is known about them except that they took place. The army marched to Alexandria and then to Barca, where it was joined by a contingent under uqbabinnafe. At Barca, the ill-fated King Hubayhiba died and the march went on without him. Some weeks later, Muawiyah entered Africa with an army of 10,000 men, which included a sizable body of noble Quraysh and Ansars, companions of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Among the younger officers serving in his army were Abdullah bin Umar, Abdullah bin Zubair, and Abdul Malik bin Marwan, the last named being the son of the scoundrel Marwan, who had embezzled funds after the Battle of Subatullah. Going through the province of Tripolitania, some opposition was met from Roman detachments and small forts, but it was overcome without much trouble, and the army arrived at Kunya, which was the name of the area where the city Caravan was later built. Here they stopped, because they discovered the presence in the vicinity of a large army. The governor of Africa prepared for battle. Scouts brought word of the approach of the Muslims, their entry into African territory, their quick disposal of Roman outposts on the way. Before the Muslims arrived at Kunya, William had set his army in motion, part of it moved by land and part of it by sea on the same ships which had brought the troops from Constantinople. As the Muslims arrived in Kunya, the Roman army of 30,000 men was camped at Susa. It was not apparently a brave army, for the ships were kept ready for embarkation in case of a reverse in battle. Its commanding general at Susa was a Greek named Nicephorus, Najfur to the Arabs. After a few days, when it became obvious that the Romans were not going to make any move to contact the Muslims, Muawiyah bin Hudaj organized all the cavalry of his army into one mounted corps and appointed as its commander Abdullah bin Zubair, our dashing hero of Subatullah. Abdullah was instructed to go and fight the Romans. The actual strength of his cavalry corps is not known. Abdullah bin Zubair moved towards Susa. He got onto some high ground by the coast 12 miles from the city and camped for the night. This high ground, near the present village of Akuda, gave excellent observation of the coastline to north and to south, and Abdullah could see the Roman fleet at anchor and the Roman camp just north of Susa, not far from the beach. The arrival of the Muslims near Susa did nothing to restore the confidence of Nicephorus, and he got part of his army embarked on the ships for a quick getaway. The following day, Abdullah bin Zubair moved forward, and bypassing the Roman camp from the right, got to the southwest edge of Susa. Here he went into camp, at a place which was under observation by the Romans. The space between the two camps was roughly where the modern part of Susa, full of tourist hotels, stands today. It was flat, open country. Soon after the arrival, it was time for the late afternoon prayer, and the entire Muslim force fell into neat lines for the congregational prayer, led by the commander, in full view of the Romans. The Christians watched in awe as the Muslims prayed and rose and prostrated themselves as one man behind the man who was military commander, as well as prayer leader. The next day, the Romans lined up for battle. We do not know if this was the full strength of the Roman army or part of it, and we have no details of the battle that followed. All we know is that Abdullah bin Zubair attacked the Roman army, and before long the Romans were in full retreat, some escaping by land routes towards Carthage, and others sailing away in their ships. Hardly had the Roman army fled the battlefield when Susa opened its gates to the Muslims and was occupied without bloodshed. A little later, Abdullah moved back to the main Muslim camp and reported to his commander-in-chief. Some units of the Roman army, while retreating from Susa, stopped at the city of Jalola, 24 miles from Kunya, and fortified the city. As soon as Muawiyah heard of this development, he sent Abdul Malik bin Marwan with a cavalry detachment of 1,000 horse to take the city. Abdul Malik moved away and laid siege to the city. Over the next few days, the Muslims made several attempts to get into the fort, while the Romans made several attempts to sally out and break the siege. Casualties were taken by both sides, but there was no decision either way. When Abdul Malik saw that he was getting nowhere, he decided to return to the main body of the army and pass the problem back to his army commander. He lifted the siege and began to move back to Kunya. Hardly had his cavalry moved a couple of miles when the Muslims noticed a large cloud of dust rising behind them. Thinking that the Romans had come out in pursuit of them, Abdullah Malik turned and formed up to receive the Roman assault. He also sent a few scouts on to contact the Romans. The scouts found no Romans on the way. They went on until they had got to Jalola, and here they found that a large part of the wall of the fort had collapsed. This was the cause of the cloud of dust seen by the Muslims. Abdul Malik was immediately informed and came galloping back to the now vulnerable city. Taking full advantage of the situation, the Muslims attacked the fort through the breach and got in. In no time, Roman resistance collapsed, and the Muslims took Jalola as a prize of war, collecting an enormous amount of booty. History tells us very little about what happened after this. We know from Gibbon that 80,000 captives were taken by the Muslims in this campaign, including those acquired from captured towns and cities. This figure may be somewhat exaggerated, but as for the casualties suffered by both sides and what happened to General Najfor and Governor William, about these matters history is silent. The Muslims took all of the province of Carthage, going as far as Bizerta, and during the process overrunning a number of smaller forts in order to eliminate the last remnants of Roman resistance. A large part of the Roman army got away by sea, some sailing to Sicily and others to Constantinople. But those who could not get away became part of the 80,000 captives. Nothing more happened till the following year, 46 Hijri, 666 AD, when Muawiyah bin Hudayj mounted a naval expedition to Sicily. The naval force, which was really a land army transported in 20 sea-going vessels and commanded by Abdullah bin Qais, landed at Sicily, raided and pillaged and overcame all opposition. Abdullah stayed in Sicily for a month, gathering spoils, and then returned to Africa. How much of Sicily was really affected by the raid is not known. The greatest prize taken by the Muslims in Sicily was an idol made of gold and silver and studded with precious stones. Muawiyah sent this idol as a special gift to Caliph Muawiyah at Damascus. The Caliph gave it as a present to his mother Hind, the redoubtable woman who had eaten the liver of the noble Hamza radiallahu ta'ala anhu at the Battle of Uhud. Hind promptly sold the idol and kept the money. This made the Muslims very angry, but there was nothing they could do about it. Some time after this raid on Sicily, Muawiyah bin Hudayj packed his bags and returned with his army to Egypt. The war was over, as had happened in the campaign of Abdullah bin Sa'd. Nearly 20 years before this, the Muslims came and conquered and went back again. They had won a great victory and the Romans had been trounced and once again driven from Africa. But no durable system was established to incorporate Africa into the permanent structure of the Muslim empire. In the year following his return from Africa, in other words early in 47 Hijri, 667 AD, Muawiyah bin Hudayj replaced Abdullah bin amrbinalaas as governor of Egypt. He was to keep this post for nearly 4 years. There were some who thought that he had got the job as a reward from Caliph Muawiyah for the part played by him in restoring Egypt to the Umayyad domain, especially the killing of Muhammad, son of Abu Bakr, and having his corpse sewn into the skin of a donkey and burnt to ashes. Muhammad's brother, Abdur Rahman bin Abi Bakr, was very forthright in his accusation. "O Muawiyah," he said, "you have received your reward from Muawiyah bin Abi Sufyan. When you killed Muhammad bin Abi Bakr, he would appoint you governor of Egypt, and he has so appointed you." The one-eyed governor denied the allegation hotly. "I did not kill Muhammad bin Abi Bakr for a governorship. I only killed him for what he did to Usman." End of chapter 18.